Where have we got Cate? There we are. Kate's our next speaker and our last speaker for tonight before questions. Kate's a midwife who's currently working as a project manager with the New Women's and Children's Project team. Kate's been a midwifery educator since 2013 when she joined the Women's and Children's Hospital. Kate's happy place is the midwifery group practice and emergency management training, which is not usually used in the same sentence. Cate has struck fear, including me, into most of the Women's and Children's crowd with running prompt days and FSEP. Her baking is the only reason she's forgiven. Cate has worked at Flinders Medical Centre for many years and overseas in southwest England, in Gloucester and Oxford. Kate's here tonight to present a short overview of placental cultural practices, thanks to Jackie Kitschke, who handballed it to her when she retired from midwifery at the Women's and Children's Hospital. So thank you, Cate.
Thank you very much. Tonight I'd like to just do an overview about, a worldwide overview really, about about cultural practices and how that might influence how we provide care for women and their families, looking at the spiritual and cultural practices that they place on their placenta. So I am a great person for obscure facts. So this presentation will be all pictures, but I have a lot of information. And I'd like to start with the ancients. The ancient Egyptians believed in the duality of the souls. One soul inhabited the body and the other the placenta. The placenta even had its own hieroglyph, which looked like a cross-section of the human placenta. In ancient texts, this symbol was even in the correct colour with dark brown and touches of red. Entire tombs have been built to house royal placentas of the pharaohs. The placenta was considered to be, by many, to be the child's secret helper. Egyptians of today have a ritual they perform on the 7th day after the baby is born. This ritual involves shaking the baby in a sieve, and its origins were probably from the hieroglyph here. The Aztecs would bury the placenta of a baby girl in the corner of the home. On the other hand, the placenta of the baby boy would be given to a warrior who to be buried in enemy territory. This was supposed to ensure that the child would grow up to be a strong and courageous warrior. In Europe, the placenta would be placed over the head of a newborn baby to prevent sore eyes. The placenta cake. According to Wikipedia, the Latin word placenta is derived from the Greek word placous, which is ancient Greek for flat, for thin or layered flatbreads, and it was first mentioned as a dessert in the 4th century BC. The cake gave its name to the organ, owing to its latter shape. The placenta cake is a dish from ancient Greek and Rome consisting of many layers of dough, interspersed with mixtures of cheese and honey, and flavoured with bay leaves and baked, then covered in more honey. It is suggested this is the ancestors of modern tiropita, or the Greek cheesecakes, baklava, and the modern-day birthday cake. That's an actual book. So I want to talk about the lotus birth. Has anyone been present with a lotus birth? Yes, my midwives are saying yes. The lotus birth is the practice of leaving the baby's cord uncut after birth so that the baby and the placenta remain attached until the cord naturally separates, usually between 3 to 10 days after birth. The practice is performed mainly for the perceived spiritual connection between the placenta and the newborn. The placenta can be wrapped in a nappy or cloth before being placed in its lotus birth bag. Some suggest putting salt and herbs, rosemary, thyme and lavender on the placenta and dead tissue as it starts to dry out. Salt can help speed up the drying process and herbs help to cover the smell. You should be changing this bag every day. One of the biggest lotus birth risks is infection, as the decomposing placenta tissue becomes a nest for infectious bacteria such as Staphylococcus, and there have been cases of that there. So the connection of the placenta is the second twin. Is often seen through many cultures that this is the second baby. In Indonesia, the placenta is seen as the baby's twin or elder sibling and is perceived as the baby's guardian throughout life. It is the father's responsibility to clean, wrap and bury the placenta on the day of the birth. The Igbo of Nigeria and Ghana treat the placenta as the dead twin of the live child and give it a full burial rites. It is believed by the Hmong people that the placenta plays a vital role in establishing a link between the living world and the spirit world. To them, an individual continues to maintain a deep connection with his or her placenta all through their life, for which reason it should not be discarded. The word used by Hmong people for the placenta actually means jacket, and they believe that the soul of an individual actually goes back to the place where his or her placenta was buried in order to collect its placenta jacket. It is only upon successfully doing so that the soul will be able to move on to the spirit world, where it can meet its ancestors. Also, it is only after collecting the placenta jacket and travelling to the spirit world that the soul can be reincarnated and sent back to the world as a new baby. So what if the placenta is not adequately buried and the soul is unable to reunite with it? Well, the Hmong people believe that in such a case, the soul will remain in a state of unease and wander for eternity, alone and naked, as it could not collect its placental jacket. A woman's fertility, a belief held by many Arabs, is the future fertility of a woman is connected to the disposition of the placenta. Should something unpleasant happen to the placenta, the woman might be rendered sterile. Couples in Transylvania who do not wish to have any more babies are known to burn off the placenta upon delivery of their child. After the burning part of the ritual is done, the father of the newborn baby is required to drink the ashes. Upon doing so, he supposedly becomes infertile, thereby deeming it impossible for the couple to have any more children. People in Ukraine make sure that the placenta is not buried by the doorway. Why so? Well, for the simple reason that it would not be possible for the couple to have any more children if the placenta gets buried there. Interestingly, Ukrainian midwives, as it is believed, just need to take a look at the placenta to tell how many more babies a couple will have in times to come, something I didn't learn. In Turkey, if a father wants his baby to grow up to be a devout individual, he must bury the umbilical cord in the courtyard of a mosque. It is to be buried in a stable for the child to become an animal lover. It is to be thrown into water so that the child may move elsewhere in search of his or her destiny. And it's thrown over a wall into the garden of a school so that the child may grow up to become a highly educated individual. Can you imagine? However, all of this needs to be done carefully after carefully washing and wrapping the umbilical cord as a mark of respect to not just the umbilical cord and the placenta, but to the relationship they hold with the baby as well. In New Zealand, the Maori use the same word for placenta and land, whenu. Traditionally, whenu were placed in hollowed gourds, earthen pots or woven baskets, and then buried in a place of significance to return them to Mother Earth. Those baskets are about $150. So maternal placentophagy, eating the placenta. This is the act of eating or consuming placentas after childbirth. It is a phenomenon observed in all mammals, aside from aquatic mammals and camels. See, I had useless information tonight, didn't I? It is currently undergoing a revival in Western culture due to many reported benefits by women, for women by women, but it has not been validated by scientific evidence. So it's not just those things there, the benefits, but also reduction in postnatal bleeding, mother-infant bonding, replenishes nutrients and increases energy. So you can have your placenta encapsulated, and this is steamed, finely sliced, dehydrated, then ground into a fine powder and placed in the capsules for consumption. There's broth as well, which I won't go into, and of course some people choose to ingest their placenta in a smoothie. You can have it as a tincture or a homeopathic remedy where it's steeped in alcohol, and apparently has no shelf life, so you could use it for your menopause as well. And finally, the print art. It's true. Many different forms of placenta art have been noted throughout history. If the baby is born in caul, who here has been present when a baby's been born in caul? Excellent. Okay, this is a very lucky baby. Some parents will keep a small piece of the amniotic membrane and stretch it to be dried. They can then paint symbols from religion, astronomy, and nature onto the parchment like tissue later. And this is seen as a very good luck charm. The myth is that if a baby is born in caul, that it can never drown. This is not true. However, the caul was often sold to sailors as a talisman for a great price. So the Vikings would nail it to their ships. Women would send it on. A popular form of placental art in modern times is the blood print of the fetal side of the placenta, which depicts the tree of life. You still with me? Yeah. Burial practices. Let's go back. Oh, no, I'm showing you too many. Let's go back. Burial practices. Okay, in Cambodia, the placenta is carefully wrapped in a banana leaf and placed beside the newborn baby for 3 days and then buried. In Thai culture, the placenta is often salted and placed in an earthen jar. On a day deemed auspicious for burying this clay pot, a site is prepared and the placenta is laid to rest. The jar is buried under a tree that corresponds to the symbol of the Asian year of the child's birth and depending on what month the baby was born. The Kikuyu of Kenya place it in an uncultivated field and cover it with grasses and grains. Some African nations swaddle the placenta in blankets and bury it beneath a tree, as the tree symbolises ongoing life. In Mali, it is thought that the placenta can affect the baby's mood or even make the baby ill. The placenta is washed, dried, placed in a basket and buried by the father. Are you getting a theme here? Dad has to sort this out. Some Aboriginal tribes bury placentas either under the tree where they birthed or under an ant pit for the green ants. Many believe that when the green ants eat the placenta, no more babies will come, or at least for a while. In the Hmong culture, the jacket people, remember them, the placenta needs to be buried inside the family home where the birth takes place. But there's a bit of a gender disparity when it comes to the location of the burial of the placenta. For males, it's necessary for the placenta to be buried right below the main post of the house. This basically goes on to signify that the male child will in time to come become the main strength of the family and serve as a performer of rituals and spiritual carrier of the household. On the other hand, the placenta of the female is buried under the bed of their parents. In Korea, the placenta is often burned and the ashes kept. During periods of illness, the ashen powder is given in a liquid to help heal the child. In Samoa, the placenta must be totally burned or buried so it will not be found by evil spirits. Burying or burning at home also ensures the child will remain close to home as it moves through life. If buried under a fruit tree, the placenta provides nutrition for the tree that in turn will provide years of nutrition for the child. In Malaysian culture, upon birth of the child, it's necessary for the placenta and umbilical cord to be buried properly in the doorway of the child's house. For both the placenta and umbilical cord need to be cleansed as meticulously as possible. After that, it's placed in a piece of cloth together with salt, tamarind, together with onions and a whole lot more. Once that's done, it's also vital for needles, books and pencils to be added into the piece of cloth. All of this is basically done in order to make sure that the child grows up to be hardworking and an individual and an intelligent student. After adding all of these items into the cloth, the placenta and umbilical cord are carefully wrapped and buried in the doorway of the house. But in Malaysian culture, it has to be buried at a certain time. It has to be buried before or after 12 o'clock, noontime. If it's buried at noon, traditionally holds that the newborn baby is going to be grown up to be very stubborn. Also, it's vital for the father to make sure that the placenta is not buried too deep, as burying it deep within the ground will delay the child's acquisition of his or her speech abilities. And in Bali, in this Balinese village, the local belief is that hanging the placenta of a newborn in the graveyard imparts magical protection of the associated child from illnesses and other misfortunes. This unique local practice entails hanging the placenta of the newborn child encased in an empty coconut shell in the Kayu Bangkak trees found in the local cemetery, and this has been protected by UNESCO, I think. Lancaster, in the 1950s, was big on human placental extracts for cosmetics. And this went on until 1994. When I was in England, the placentas were used for oil of Ulay, and it was banned. It went off to, so 94, they were still using them. Yes, you thought, the other things were weird. So you can, yes, they've now moved on to sheep placentas. I've seen this in Italy, conditioners, and you can also have it injected into your face. But the other things that the French did with it was that the French pharmaceutical firms used it to make a protein, albumin for burns, and to make enzymes to treat rare genetic disorders. And just in case you wanted to know what else to do for your placenta and cord, you can make jewellery out of it. This particular fetching rose is an umbilical cord. This is encapsulated placentas. That's breast milk, piece of hair, and the placenta represented. And cufflinks, because I didn't want to leave out the men in the audience. Everyone can have some. So thank you. I hope that's giving you a little insight into how magic the placenta is. Thank you.